So we have covered creating objects out of polygons as well as creating objects out of surfaces. Now we're going to be jumping into UV layouts. This is a procedure that is only used for polygon models or objects. Now, some of you might be wondering what UVs are. A UV or a UV map is a 2D representation of a 3D object. Basically, if you ever open up an atlas and you can see the entire globe stretched out over a page. So they took a spherical object and put it in a 2D space. The same goes for 3D objects. So if I bring in the default cube and I go top right hand corner here and we jump into UV editing. Let me just make this window a bit bigger and zoom out. And I grab this cube again. You'll see this cube is laid out flat. So the seam lines, or where they cut to open this guy and fold it open, are these thicker, darker lines that we see on the model. So this is how Maya has already laid out this cube for us. So if I delete this cube and say, for example, bring in a sphere, you can see again a spherical object laid out in a 2D space. Go away with this one. If I go torus, torus is pretty easy. Well, it takes up the whole UV space. And let's take one of these complex objects. Yeah. So you can see this complex objects, UVs aren't laid out properly. It's going beyond the 1 marker on the V axis. So it's never supposed to go outside of its 1:1 UV square. So I can go right click and go to UVs and just grab all of them and potentially just scale them down and just move them up that way. And that sorts that easy problem out. So if I apply the test material that Maya gives you to be able to see if you have any texture stretching and any of those anomalies that could potentially take place on your model, we just go inside of the UV window and there's a little checkerboard, and now you'll see we see a bunch of checkers and numbers on our complex shape. Now here I can see these squares aren't really squares, they're rectangles. Here they skewed off to the side, rectangles here, the ones are stretching. So the aim of this is to get all these little checker maps to be almost perfect squares and not have them stretch like they are currently. So if I go to UV mode and grab one of the UV points and just move them around, you'll see the checker map moving. Because if I turn on here, you can see it's trying to put this flat 2D texture onto our 3D objects. And if we start moving UVs around to figure out or to negate some of the stretching that is happening, you'll see there's a good chance, well, that one actually worked. There's a good chance you could either do more damage than good, but I'm gonna just see if I grow those 3 UVs and straighten them out. I'm just gonna turn off the image in the UV editor because I can't really see my UVs. I'm just gonna click this little button here so that goes away. By scaling those guys flat, I've created more stretching, and these guys here, making them flat, gave me basically almost perfect little squaresies. So there's a few different ways for your UVs to be displayed in. Currently it's just a wireframe with no shading. Then we can use this guy, wireframe and shaded. So how this works is if you have UVs that are overlapping, it will start turning those faces red to show that you have overlapping UVs. We go with the last option. So with this view enabled, we want to get to the color blue as most as possible, because if we start, say, you moving this UV, you'll see that the bottom 2 triangles start turning red and the top 2 here are turning white. So when it's turning red, they don't have enough UV space, and when they turn white, you're overstretching them in the UVs. And then the blue is the ideal UV space that you would like this specific face to be in. So you can go around and just pull these guys and you'll see they'll start turning blue as you start moving these UVs around like so. Now you can see I get more, a little bit of blues in here. Go in here and then go up here. As you can see, we are getting to more blues and less whites and reds like that one. If we go start pulling it down around here, it's getting its blue, and then these bottom ones I would need to move down something like that and potentially take this guy in somewhere. Now, there are tools within Maya that could help us do this a lot quicker. So I'm going to go into the UV toolkit, and as you can see, there are a bunch of options in here. So I'm going to go to UV mode. I'm going to grab all of these guys, and I'm just going to scale them down so they're inside the 0 to 1 UV space. And now we can go and start looking at some of these options. In here, we normally use the unfold tool to unfold a 3D object that we've already added our seam lines to. So if I click unfold, Maya will do its best to distribute the UVs so they all have the same resolution all over. By doing that, you can see we've fixed most of the stretching that's taking place. We scaled it maybe 1 or even bigger in that direction. You can see there's now rectangles in there. If we start doing that to get those top guys to be more square, let's go push a little bit more. Now we grab this entire piece of geometry and just scale it in so it's inside the 0 to 1 space. So I'm going to go, let's try a cylinder for example, and then I'm going to break the UVs, and then we can start just using it to work through some of the tools we have for UV editing. So I'm going to drop in my cylinder, I'm going to scale it up. I'm first going to break the UVs because as you can see it's currently already laid out properly. I'm going to disable that one, and I'm going to disable that one, so it's just the default gray. So now I'm going to go up to UVs, and I'm going to go to, let's see, it's called automatic mapping. So what automatic mapping does, it projects from 6 sides to try its best to get clean UVs. You can increase the number of projection angles if you want. So if we go to UV automatic mapping options, and we can go 6, and we can go 12 and say less distortion for example, and click apply. Let's see now. Now you can see there are 12 points of projection to get this guy working. So if we go fewer pieces and click apply, you will see the UVs change accordingly. So less distortion, do that. You can see those guys are starting to go oval in shape. So I'm going to try and break this projection. I'm going to grab this guy, I'm going to go to UVs, and I'm going to go camera based. Now you can see our 3D object trying to be in a 2D space. In our viewport from this angle it looks amazing, but as soon as we start looking behind it, you'll see the UVs kind of go a bit cray. So let's start using our tools to cut this guy up into UV islands so that we get a decent UV layout. So in here I can go right click and go to edge mode and go double click that edge to get the top edge loop on the top here. Then I'm going to go into my cut options, and then I'm going to go and click cut, and now you will see there's a thicker line because we now cut a UV seam. So I select the center point here, or the center UV, and I go control right click. I can go to UV shell. Now it will select all the UV points that's within this shell or island. Those are the two different terminologies people tend to use for the little 2D planes that we cut our 3D object into. Now if I go at the bottom and do the same at the bottom here, double click, and I go cut, and now I can go right click, UV, select that center point, control right click to UV shell. Now I've got the top and bottom separated from the cylindrical shape. Now we would like to get the cylindrical shape to be flat and 2D. So the easiest way to do that really in the cylindrical thing is grab one of the edges that go up and down in this case, and then I'm going to click cut, and now you'll see it added a seam in there, and it's also now a UV island. So if I go right click, if I go control right click and go to shell, you will see it's its own independent island. Now I want to unfold these UVs because they are kind of distorted, and this one has overlapping UVs. So if I go to here, you will see there's blue here, and then the red means it's upside down. This guy's upside down. If I go here, you'll also see they're pretty much a light blue, so they're getting enough UV space, but they're still not ideal. Just undo that. So I'm going to grab my cylinder here, double click one of the UVs, and we'll select the entire island. I'm going to go into my unfold options, and I'm going to click unfold, and there you can see Maya unfolded my cylindrical shape into a single sheet. Now let's go grab this one and click unfold. Maya's gone gone and made that nice and round for us, and then unfold. Maya's made that nice and round for us. Now, before I go and scale each island independently, we want to have the same resolution across this object, which means we would need to grab all its islands and scale them uniformly so that they have the same resolution everywhere. Because, for example, if I have this guy a little bit bigger, that's the bottom section, a little bit bigger, you'll see we're giving that island more resolution, so more pixels to display, where the cylindrical shape is not getting as much resolution as this bottom section as well as the top section. So normally when the UV islands are part of a single object, you would want to have all those parts or all those islands of that object to be the same scale. So before I start scaling UVs to fit into the 0 to 1 space, I first do all the unwrapping and cutting and then scale them down uniformly. Now we've got a nice clean UV. Go to object mode, you can see all nice squares everywhere, and we're happy. If I grab this guy and go delete, now let's go grab this complex shape and let's see what we can do with this guy. I'm just going to scale him up and move him up. So I'm going to go look at this guy. First, I'm going to go remove the UVs that it comes with defaultly. I'm going to go to UVs and I'm going to do camera based. So it takes a photo or a screenshot of this object from this side only. And then I'm going to go to edge mode, and now I'm going to try and find an edge that goes through the entire object. So I'd like that one, potentially that one, and let's go that one. Just holding down shift and selecting these edges. Just remember that, because it seems I actually forgot. So if I selected all those edges going all the way around, I'm going to click cut. So now if I go right click UVs, I should be able to grab that island on its own. Let's go click unfold. Now we've got a better looking UV there. Now I want to do the same on the other side. So I can go here, that edge, and then loop back on itself. So that guy, I'm going to go cut, right click UV, grab that island, move it up. As you can see, it's upside down. Fold it out or unfold it. And now we're left with this center section. As you can see, it's relatively cylindrical, so I could potentially grab only one of these edges and cut it, and then I should be able to unfold it, and then Maya create a nice straight collection of faces. And now we're getting a better UV layout than the default UVs Maya ships out with this primitive shape. So now I'm just going to go and move these guys so they take up optimal space. So I'm going to take this game and then, whoa, I don't want to rotate anymore, I want to move. I can move this guy here. Now grab all of them, scale them down so that they all fit in the same 0 to 1 plane. There we go. Now, you all should be able to agree that the squares are nice and square and everything is looking nice. Don't concern yourself about the numbers or the letters not going over the other faces, because if I just turn on this guy, that is just where they lie in the space. So I could move them around so that the numbers and letters wrap around nicely. I am more concerned about the squares and getting them looking square. Let's go grab this guy. I want to see, this guy has a bit of stretching happening here. So if I just move it around, let's go unfold a few times just in case. Now we can play with its scale, for example, just to get those guys nice and square. It looks a lot more nice and square. I would potentially need to do the same with this guy. Now I'm going to go scale them out. I'm going to try my utmost best to get the same size between the two so that the resolution is the same. This one wants to be a bit wider than this one. Okay, I see there's not really squares but rectangles. I'm going to do that. But now I can also see that I've got a larger face section here and more smaller squares on this guy, which is just basically saying that these guys are taking up more space in this 0 to 1 plane than the other guys. So now I want to grab this center section and scale it up until its cubes are relatively the same size as the other guys. So there about looks the same size, but as you can see, it's going off the 0 to 1 plane. I'm just gonna grab all of them again and scale them down. And just turn off a little background. And now we have an object that is UV'd, and then we can now take this UV and take it into Photoshop and paint on it, or we can take it into Mudbox and paint on the 3D object and all that good stuff. You need to remember, you need to always UV any model that you model. There should be no model in your scene that does not have clean and clear UVs. Okay, so with that said, I'm going to end this lesson off here, and the next lesson we are going to go through more of the little tools we see here, and in the next lesson we'll be covering more of the tools that we see in our UV toolkit. So catch you in the next lesson.